Hi again. So in the previous videos, we saw everything about the different architectures, like the file server architecture, or static files architecture, like the three-tier, which is what we want to implement, and we also create a little design of the little application we wanna make. Okay. Then the other thing we did is just to try to implement part of that, at least like a template for it using Bootstrap and with a very basic front end, which you can see in here. We have just the basic file folder for the front end, and we are still running things using reload. So basically, we are on this phasing here. And then what we want to do is that we want to move to a full stack application. Initially, we are going to be implementing like this part. Okay. Before we do that, here is in the terminal. I'm doing reload there. So let me stop that and then come back here. And I forgot to commit this file. So let's go and say I'm going to add the front end, and then I'm going to commit -m and say adding basic front end static static front end with Bootstrap. And then, of course, I can get an error because you only should put two M's in commit, not three. And then I can do a git push, and I haven't defined what is my type of application. So it's going to be this, and then I can do a push. There we go. So this should be in there, and here is the project. It's basically this Node Express Mongo ES6 apartment listings organizer. So now I have stopped my server, so I shouldn't be able to see it in here. And then we want to start doing like the basics of Express.js. You can find these by just searching for Express.js. And then if you get to their website, here, your website, then in there, just go into the getting started, and you were supposed to follow this. So I'm assuming that you already did that, but anyhow. In any case, remember, we have only the front end now, and we have like the README and all of that, but the front end is just static. And then we have to start creating the Express thing, which is going to be the backend part. So we are going to be replacing Reload that we have in here, that it's a tiny server, with something that is a little bit more beefy, that is a little bit bigger and has more nutrients to it, that is going to be Express. For that, we actually have to create like this application that we're making in here as a JavaScript project, like an NPM project. The way you do that is just go and say npm init -y, which is going to initialize. When I do that, that is going to create my package JSON that you can see in here. The -y means do not ask me questions and then just go with the flow, whatever you have in there. I'm going to say this is going to be an MIT license. John, Alexis, Guerra, Gomez is going to be the author. And then remember, very important, you need to add type module because we are going to be using ES6 modules. And finally, I also show you that we should be always, every time you do eslint development, you should be including eslint and prettier. Eslint is a linter. It's an application that helps us find errors in our code before even having to interpret anything. And then prettier is a formatter. It's basically something that is going to format things so it will look prettier. Okay. When I run this script, remember this script, it's actually just a basic thing that I created. So because I'm running all this all the time, it only is installing prettier, eslint, and all of the configuration files, and is copying my default configuration file, which is this one in here. You can find that in here, and then here is the default configuration file. And the fact that this little icon in here is not showing any errors, and also that you can see the squiggly lines in here on any JavaScript thing, it means that ESLint is working. The other thing is that I can go and remember command palette on VS Code is just Command Shift P, or you go into View Command Palette, and then you can say Format Document, and Format Document is going to be running prettier, and that runs like that. You can also do it. I like doing it Option Shift F. There is also an option in which you can say every time I save, please run prettier automatically, so it will run it for you. And I hear from a student that if you just click on this, oh, but it didn't work. Okay, but that was supposed to be like another way of doing it. It seems like it doesn't. Anyhow, so now we have that part. Now, let's go and make an error in here. Like if I remove this thing, then you're going to get an error like this. Like this is saying eslint is not working properly. Then you can go and just open this option, and that is going to give you the errors. In this case, it's saying unexpected identifier around plugins. Sadly, it's not telling me in what line, so that's a big problem with eslint. I wonder if it says earlier. Seems like it doesn't. But at least we know where it was the error, so you can fix it. And once you fix it, I recommend you to run Command Shift P for the command palette, and then restart the eslint server. And by doing that, you should be able to have your file. Okay. Next thing is that now I have my package JSON application, and then this is saying that the main entry point for this is going to be an index file, index.js. I'm going to call it backend.js, and this is just for pedagogical reasons. Nobody does that in the real world, but in here is going to help us differentiate what is the code that you put from your backend versus the one from the front end, from the backend. Okay. And as you can see, Copilot is very eager to try to help me write things. And if I write some wrong things, then ESLint is working. And then that means that we can dance because ESLint is working. And remember, never develop JavaScript code without running ESLint and Prettier, having it properly configured. Because if you do that, then like you could be just omitting a lot of errors that you have in your code. Okay. Save this, save that. And then finally, the last thing you need to do in here is just to run my application. So you can do that by doing something like this, which says hola from the backend. And then remember that we have our front end in here. And that front end, it is going to be saying hello from the front end. But for that, we are going to need to include it, which we are going to do in a second. Okay. So having said that, if you want to do this with Express, and then you can go and follow the tutorial that you can find in here. This is going to be like the hello world, and this is the default application. This is doing it with CGS. We can do that with ESM modules, which is what we want. So we are going to say that we want to import Express from Express, and then you can see that Copilot is very eager to autocomplete everything. I'm going to initialize Express. I'm going to create a port, and in that port, it's just a constant variable. I'm going to either go and say, check if there is an environment variable with the name port. And if not, then use the default 3000. Okay. Let's use something more useful in here, initializing the backend. Okay. So I can move that here, and then Copilot, it's crazy writing code. And then I'm going to say that I'm going to use, no, sorry, that I'm going to listen for connections from the port. Okay. And then as you can see, this is going to take two parameters. The first one is what port you want to listen for connections. And the second one is what is the callback that should be called when the thing is ready running. So this line of code, line 9, like this function that you see in here, will only be called directly by Express. So as my typical question, in what line am I calling that function? I am not calling that function. That function is being called by Express. And it's going to be called the moment the server is finished loading. Okay. When I do that, I should be able, like remember, like if I try to see this is not working anymore. And then I can go and try to run it in the port 3000, which, oh, probably I have another one already running, of course. So let me go and stop that one. So if I go into the port 3000, you can see that now I don't have anything in there. Okay. Now, if I come in here and then I start my server, then I get an error because it's telling me that Express is not installed. So I need to do that. I forgot that step. And then I just do npm install -- save Express. So when you do that, this is going to modify our package JSON. And I want you to take a look at the dependencies that we have. So this is the dependencies Express. We are using version 5.1. And then these are the development dependencies. The regular dependencies are the dependencies that are required for running the application. And the development dependencies are the ones that you use for developing the application. Okay. So these ones, you don't need them for running the application, just for developing. What else? So now if I run again the backend, now it's telling me that it's running in the port 3000. And if I go and I refresh that, then now I have a page. This is very important because now I have a server. The server, it's not receiving an HTML page, and that's why the browser cannot receive that, but at least it's listening. So it's kind of like I connected, but I didn't get anything because it's our very basic one. But if you go and stop the server, now this is not going to load. Okay, and I'm refreshing with, as usual, remember, Command Shift R. That you can actually, I think, also see in here. Where was that? I forgot. Anyhow, so it's like, remember that you should do Command Shift R because that's a hard refresh, and then it's going to restart the like clear the cache for that. So let's go and start this one again and then come back in here. So if you keep on seeing on the documentation, then we also have an endpoint in there, but we're going to talk about that in a minute. You can go and talk about Express Generator. I create a bit of that in office hours. These ones explains like how you can do the different routing, but for the moment we want the static server because remember we already like we created this thing, but now we need this part. We need to be able to serve the front end that we had. And the way we serve that is by serving in Express is called a static folder or serving static files. Okay. So the way we do that, if you take a look in here, is by calling on the app that we created. You go and say, I want to serve the public folder. So we can do that in here, come in here on my backend, and then I have my app. We can put this up here. And then we are going to say app.use and then express.static and Copilot guessed it right. And it's saying it's going to be my front end. Okay. So now when I do that, if I come in here and I take a look at this, it's still giving me this. And there is a main thing that you have to remember. And is that when you are developing with Node and Express, um, every time you make a change in the backend, you have to restart the server. So I'm going to stop that and start it again. And then fingers crossed, and then I refresh, and then we have a page, and then we dance. Okay? So very important. Remember that you have to restart that. So we can also change that. And by the way, remember the console log we had? Here is the message from that. You have the message from the backend in the console because this is running JavaScript in the console in the backend, and this is the JavaScript that is being run in the front end. So um, we are going to have JavaScript running in here, like not yet in the routes, but in the Express code right now. And then you also have JavaScript running in here. You can also have JavaScript running in Mongo, but we are going to get to that in a minute. Okay. So finally, I don't want to have to be restarting this manually, so we can go and fix that. And it's that coming here, and then first is that I'm going to create, or actually in here, I'm going to stop this and I'm going to install a package, and I'm going to put it as requirement, like regular dependency, called NodeMon. And NodeMon, it's an application that just looks for changes in a JavaScript file, and then every time it sees a change in the current folder, it restarts the server. It's exactly designed for that. So in this case, what I'm going to do is that I'm going to say the start script is going to be, I'm going to call node, and then from the node modules folder, okay, oops. From the node modules folder, I'm going to look into the nodemon folder. And then, so if you take a look in here from Node modules, because this is the local installation of all of the packages that Node needs or NPM needs. I have NodeMon, which I just installed it, and there is a Vim folder. And inside that Vim folder, there is a Vim, like NodeMon.js, and I'm going to start with the backend. So if I save this, okay, this is scary. So let's cancel that because it is telling me that it was updated, and then hopefully this will work. So now I have here Express and NodeMon, and then if I now run npm start, which is running the script start, then this thing is going to just run NodeMon. Okay, so let me come here. This one is working, and then the final thing will be just to commit this in status. So I'm going to add the backend, the config file, the package block. You should put it in there. and then a package JSON. Like, depending on like if you're sharing that with your peers, it could be useful so you to have the same versions of the packages. And then I'm going to commit very basic express backend, only loading static folder, which is going to be our front end. Okay, so I can put those in there and then I can git push. Okay, so that's for this one.